So thank you everyone for coming. Again, this is the Introduction to Google Analytics for the dental team, and I am Dr. David Wenk. I'll be presenting tonight. So about me. I'm a practicing general dentist in New York City, and I'm the president of Short Hills Design, which, as many of you know, is an internet marketing and specifically specialty web development firm for dentists and physicians. I'd like to thank tonight Mark Dykman from Esteto Dental Labs for sponsoring this event for us. I've known Mark for many years. I've lectured for Mark. He runs a full-service dental lab in Maplewood, New Jersey, and he has what feels like hundreds of CE programs throughout the course of the year. So they are in northern New Jersey, central Jersey, southern Jersey. So certainly if you're looking for CE and you're in the tri-state area, Mark is definitely the person to talk to. There are all sorts of events that he hosts. Again, you can get in touch with Mark and find him at esteto.com. And Mark, thank you again. I appreciate your sponsorship. So let's do an overview of our presentation. We're going to do about a 5-minute introduction. Then I want to talk about the web design workbook for dentists and the web design workflow for a good 5 minutes. We're then going to talk about the setup and some basic concepts of Google Analytics. I know I'm not going to go through how to set that up. I've built in what happens for those of you who don't have it set up. I want to focus on the concepts tonight. And then we're going to go into Google Analytics itself and look at some real data from a real website of mine that I've run for a number of years. And then we are going to take questions. On the subject of questions, I'll probably say this again. I do want to keep this at 45 minutes because I promised. Certainly if there are questions that, come after that, I certainly will stay to help answer questions. So let's do our introduction. Basic computer knowledge. I will be honest with you. You might need a web developer to help you set up Google Analytics, but once it's set up, you don't need no special knowledge required to work with it. In terms of recordings, I will certainly have the recording available for you probably a few days after the presentation. I don't usually hand out slide copies. It's just a waste of paper, but certainly if you'd like a copy of the slides, send me an email and I'll be more than happy to send them to you. Now, if you have questions, as I said before, I want to keep it to 45 minutes. There is a raise your hand feature there, so certainly put that raise your hand feature. I'll see you have a question, but there's also a questions feature which you can use to ask a question. I will look at the end. I just don't want to stop because I know that, like any CE, we want to get through it. Although, forgive me that I'm not giving a CE for this, but you know what I mean. Okay, the private Facebook group. I have a private Facebook group, and that's for basically dentists, physicians, healthcare people, and your team members and your staff for a private discussion with us. The only reason it's private is because I just don't want it hit by marketers. Again, there might be a handful in there, but they're people who I know well who are not there to sell you their wares. It's there for us to, as colleagues, really, as staff, as colleagues, as dentists, hygienists, team members, talk about marketing, internet marketing, websites. And again, I like the feedback from these webinars to go in there. That's where we can all talk and learn something together. So you can hit that link, shorthillsdesign.com, FB group, to request the invitation. Now, Google Analytics. So there's two major uses for Google Analytics. And the first major use, obviously, is to gather actionable data about your visitors. Now, obviously, that's oversimplified, but certainly that is what at its core, that's what we want to do. The other thing that we can do is to really independently double-check your marketing company's data. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. Okay, briefly. The web design workbook for dentists. I'm not selling books tonight. This is not a book selling webinar. But I wrote this book many, many years ago, and I've been updating it because everyone seemed to ask me the same questions all the time. Similarly, how your patients ask you all the time, when I smile, how come it's cold out? How come my teeth hurt when it's cold outside? Same concept. So I wrote a book about that. The reason I'm highlighting that is because I want to talk about this year the web design workflow. And that's going to help us put in time and space where we are with, where does analytics go? And, when I lecture, I relate it to denture. I think about it like this. So I understood, in phase 2 in dental school that we went ahead and we border molded in step 2. And then I didn't understand that when I border molded in step 2, how that wound up affecting what happened when I delivered the denture later. So that's why I wanted to explain this very briefly. So phase one, planning, development, and setup of your website. You've got to have a website as the center of your marketing presence on the internet. Many years ago, I was lecturing at a lecture for the AGD for New Jersey, and Mark Zuckerberg's father, Dr. Ed Zuckerberg, was there lecturing, talking about Facebook as the center of the universe. Certainly, Facebook is very important, and it's something we can talk about another time. But for now, understand that the website is the center of the universe. Phase two is where we get into things such as Facebook, social media, pay-per-click. Anything you do here in phase two to drive people to your website, that's phase two. So it certainly might be Facebook. For some of our pediatric clients, it might be Pinterest, Instagram. Again, whatever it happens to be. It could be, Gasp, a Yellow Pages ad. There are oral surgeons I know who use the Yellow Pages because it works. As I say, again, to people, they say, well, David, Dr. Wank, I spend X amount of money on this every month. Is that good? And I say, I have no idea. A, are you getting patients? And B, how much does it cost you per patient? And is that, what it costs, what you're willing to pay to acquire a new patient? And is whatever marketing I'm doing meeting that goal, meeting that level? So phase three is what I want to talk about tonight. That's going to be website analytics and tracking. We're not going to talk about conversion optimization. We don't have time. But analytics really is what's going on. It's when you say to your staff, hey, how many recalls did we do this month? How many recalls did we do last month? What's the difference? Simple analytics, you do it every day in your practice, and you might not know it, but it's exactly what you're doing. And what a lot of us aren't doing, and our colleagues aren't doing, and dentists and physicians aren't doing, is looking at the website and saying, well, what data do I know about that? So we're going to look at that. So Google Analytics. So what is Google Analytics? In a nutshell, it's the EKG, it's the heartbeat of your website, and really all of your internet marketing. Google Analytics lives on your website, but certainly it's integral in all of the marketing that you're going to do. I'm sure as most of us switch to some sort of digital marketing, they are going to ask you, or they should ask you, about Google Analytics because we're going to integrate it. So it's a free tool from Google. It collects data from your website, and you can use it to make informed decisions about marketing. Should I, keep spending money on that? Should I do this? Should I do that? So certainly, we're going to talk about that more, but that's really the big picture. So every website should have Google Analytics, and not just because it's free. And installation of the code is very straightforward. Every website we build at Short Hills Design, of course, our clients have Google Analytics. And also, please make sure that you own your analytics account. I don't have that on a slide, but if this were a live lecture and I would tell you, pick up your pens and write this down, please own your own Google Analytics account. Because if you leave whatever provider you're working with, which does happen, I want to make sure that you own your data. For our clients, we're administrators on their data, and they can certainly add us or remove us anytime they want, but I want you to own it. That's the one thing not written down here that I do want you to know. Okay, so what can we learn from Google Analytics in general? Well, we can learn the number of visitors, number of new visitors, how many people came from specific location, how many people came from the zip code 10025 in Tribeca, how many of them came from Facebook or other sites, and of course you can get very complex. How many visitors from New York came on a Tuesday from an iPhone? There are a total different number of permutations you can pick. You certainly don't need them all, but it can get really complicated, which is great. As complicated as you want. The time spent on the web page. Do people who come from Facebook spend more time on my website than people who came from, let's say we have a Care Credit, and they find us on Care Credit, or do people from my cousin's website that I advertise on, hypothetically, do they visit more pages on my website on average than people who come from a Google search? Again, that's important data because, well, wait a minute. If people from my cousin's website, again, hypothetically, in make-believe land, are spending more time and more pages on my website than another place I get traffic from, well, what do I want to know? What's going on with that demographic that's special that they spend all this time on my website? And of course, your AdWords metrics, you can certainly confirm and deny some of your AdWords metrics in analytics. So, setup. I'm not going to go into the details how to set it up, but suffice it to say, in a nutshell, you create a free Google account and you sign up for Google Analytics. You configure the account and add the code to your website. That's really the big picture. Here's a blog post here. Don't do this now. Take you about a half hour to set it up because you do have a couple of steps. Most of you, I'm assuming, still have a Google account. If not, create one. I always recommend that you have one for the practice. Don't use your personal email for it. So if you are, Dr. Wank Dentistry, be drwankdentistry@gmail.com, just so you have that account. And so add the tracking code. That might require some technical help, but again, once that's done, it's a one-time thing. So, and the reason I did it like this is because there are a number of steps in each step, and Google has a great listing of what the exact steps are, and so I don't see a need to reinvent the wheel for that. Okay, and then a review of vocabulary can also be helpful. Reminds me of a time my assistant and I don't even remember what we were doing. Might have been a filling. And the patient said to us, "Come on now, do you guys really know what each of those instruments are called?" And we looked at her and I said, "Of course I do." I'm not going to tell her, hand me the curve thingy at the... So absolutely. Again, you don't need to know the vocabulary back and forth to understand this or tonight's presentation, but this is maybe a 2-page blog post that just goes over a couple of the big picture concepts that you just have to know. And again, you don't need it now. Print it out as a reference later. Just something that might be helpful when you're looking at it. What I'd really like you to do, is when we get to the data part of this, don't look at your own data at the same time. Put the recording side by side later on, and then look at your data, because I don't want you to miss things. So again, our 2 major uses: gather actionable data about your visitors, and independently double check the data that your company reports. And by number 2, I mean, and we're going to talk about that more, what I mean really there is, if you are, let's skip that for now, and let's get to that later when we talk about specific example, because I want to do that then. So, okay. Now, how to think about Google Analytics. So when we're thinking about Google Analytics, you ask a question and you look in Google Analytics for the answer. If we were a history class, I'd say it's like the Oracle. We're going to look in the Oracle and see, is this, is this the correct thing to do? What should we do? And I put these crowns here because think about it like this. Again, let's relate it to dentistry, that you want to know how many crowns you did in a month. And let's say for November and December, you did 50 crowns a month. Great. And then January, you do 15, and February, you've done another 50. And you look and you say, that's strange. We average 50 crowns a month. This is really scary. What happened in January? We only had 15. And sometimes changes in the data are actually more, you get more information from the actual, data itself. And then you panic and say, oh my goodness, we only did 15 crowns. And they say, don't you remember, Dr. Wank? You took 3 weeks off, to go to Mars. So that's why we only had the... Now I have an answer of why that data looks like it does. Now, what I don't need to know, now I could say to my staff, hey, we did 50 crowns in November. How many of them were anteriors? Okay. And of what percentage of anteriors did I do, Emax? And did I do, so sure, you could certainly get down to the detail. How many molars did we do? How many, number 19s did we do? How many number 19s did we do that were Bruxier versus PFM versus, so again, that level of detail, probably not that necessary and probably not that helpful. But certainly knowing that we did 50, 50, 15, 50, and explaining why we had a change in the data point, that's something that's helpful. So Google Analytics, you don't need to read it start to finish. For those of you who had the Schillingberg in dental school like I did, we did have to read it, basically start to finish. But, when you are a 3rd year or a 4th year, and you're in pre-lab or you're in clinic, and you want to remember, the night before you've got the procedure, what are the steps of creating a cast, post, and core, you're going to open that chapter in Schillingberg and you're going to read it. You're not going to read Schillingberg, backwards and forwards to find out that specific answer to that question. And so similarly, Google Analytics, we take that approach. So let's look at, for a minute, the raw data. So what are some of just the general questions that we could want to know the answers to? So how many new visitors came to my website this month from my local area? Very reasonable question. It's good to know. If I have 1,000 visitors in a month and 900 of them came from Canada and my office is in Florida, 900 of those people are probably not going to become patients. So when I go to the cocktail party and brag that I had 100 people, 1,000 people come to my website, really only about 100 of them might be good, so to speak. Which website sends the most visitors to my website? Everybody wants to say they're going to send you traffic and you sign up with my service and we're going to get you this and we're going to get you that. Well, why not know the truth? So, where do we get traffic from? We can get traffic from Google search. We can get traffic from paid search. We can get traffic from sites that we put our profiles on, like Invisalign site or Seric, where we, have a directory profile, AGD, ADA, Facebook, wherever it happens to be. And you can say, look, you know what? It turns out that I didn't realize that we were getting so many from social media or so few from social media or whatever it happens to be. But again, I'm trying to figure out, we're getting patients, we're getting visitors from certain places. Where am I getting the most from? And is my homepage effective? When people come to my homepage, do they like it? And do they check it out or do they just leave? And that's, again, a very important question. Same thing like thinking about your door. If they come into your office, they open the door to check in, they took one look at the office and turn around and leave. That's not good. And again, is my office pleasant? Is it nice? Are people welcome in the door? Are they taking that next step and checking in? Or are they running out the door before they tell you that they're here for their appointment? Okay, so now let's expand this a little bit. So we said, how many new visitors came to my website this month from my local area? And so we're going to look at that now and say, well, is the number decreasing, increasing, or decreasing over time? Again, simple question. I was lecturing for Zimmer, and I said to people, in the audience, raise your hand if you're paying for SEO. People raise their hands. I said, now don't raise your hand, but did any of you know, just big picture, is my SEO campaign, the SEO you're paying for, did you get traffic to the website? And I said, don't raise your hands. But there were a lot of blank stares. I didn't need to know, I got 4 patients in March and 3 of them were for Invisalign. I don't care about that. What I care about that at the top level is, if you know that you had, October, November, and December, you had, 100 visitors to your website. Forget about if they're patients. Forget about anything. 100 visitors to your website. Now you've paid them, $1,500 in January for SEO, whatever they're going to do for marketing, SEO, whatever it is. And now, did you at least have 101 visitors? And that's really simple stuff, because what happens is over 6 months of time, you can say to them, look, we've been paying you X amount a month, and we've got 1 new visitor a month, and I don't know if $1,500 a month is worth a visitor. Part of what we do, in our new content program that we're probably going to push out towards the middle of Q2, that, again, not selling a content program tonight, but the idea of our content program is just this, is we're going to produce content for you, and you can certainly do this yourself, but you produce content, and the goal of that content is to drive visitors. In the beginning, that's all you want to do, is get people in the door, get people to your website. And so after we write articles for you, at the end of this 6-month period, we're hoping to say, look, you had 100 visitors a month coming, and now you've paid us for this content service, and now you've got 125 a month, or 150 a month. But are you seeing a definitive increase in the number of people coming to your site based on what you are paying? And then again, is it worth it? And so you can certainly say to that company, you can say to me, David, look, we did this, and you know what? We listened to you and we're not getting the visitors. Or look, we are getting the visitors, terrific. So now that I know we're getting visitors, we're going to pay you to do more for us. Now that I know we're not getting visitors, we're going to try something else. So next, and that's again, checking your company. Which website sends the most visitors? Like I said, here's a great one. Are we paying for ads on a site that sends no traffic? And I said that twice because I have a client of mine, and they there's a local website that they've been paying for a long time for a banner ad. And I said, I don't know if that's worth the money that you're spending on that. And they said, well, you know what? It's a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, and I feel bad telling them no. And I said, well, listen, just show them the analytics data. And tell them that tell them that blame me, blame your web guy. Say, look, we looked at analytics, we looked at how many people came from, and we're only getting, 2 people a month from your website. Analytics doesn't lie. That's not even customers or, patients. That's just visitors. So I can't justify the cost. And is my homepage effective? Do visitors stay on the page or do they leave? And again, that's your office. Do they open the door and then walk out? So what I'm saying is now here, and thinking about this paying for ads, shouldn't you make sure that people like your webpage before you spend money sending traffic to the page? And that's something to think about. And again, I highlight that because it's so important, especially with paid, with anything you're paying for when you're paying for traffic, which in some cases is good and in some cases not good. Again, it's case by case. It's that step 2 where I said, what works for you? Half of you fell out of your chairs when I said yellow pages, but look, these oral surgeons tell me, hey, you know what? We do it because it works. So the one term I want to talk about here, because it's important, is the bounce rate. And we're getting a few minutes, in about 4 minutes, we're going to go to some live data. But I want to tell you that, do people like my specific page or not? That is the bounce rate. And so I always laugh because I think about this as soup. Let's say you have this delicious soup in the restaurant. And the question is, do the people like the soup? So now if 100 people, you serve 100 people the soup, and 90 of these people don't like the soup. They have the soup, they walk up and get out and leave. That's a 90% bounce rate. So 90 people didn't like your soup and left, only 10 people stayed for the entree. Whereas if you switch it around and say, okay, we have the soup and we had 90 people love the soup and stayed for the entree, and 10 people left, that's only a bounce rate of 10%. How many people did one thing, just taste the soup, and left? So again, how many people come in your door and immediately leave? And think about your homepage now. So if you have a homepage and 90% of the people that come to your homepage see the website's homepage and leave, that's a negative indicator. If 10% of the people, if only 10% of the people who see your homepage leave and 90% continue on to do something else on the site, that's fantastic. But again, remember, not everybody comes to the website through the homepage. But for those that do come to the homepage, because for the majority of the sites that I've seen over the years, medical and dental, they do come to the homepage. And for those, don't you want to make sure that you're presenting them something that they want to see, that they like? Because again, if they come to that homepage and they don't like what they see, for whatever reason, they're not getting any further. So that's why sometimes it makes sense to look at the bounce rate for a homepage. Just you want to get it maybe 20, 30% like that, 40, just to, people are browsing. But you certainly want to know that it's not 90. You don't want to chase everyone away. And again, I love this slide. So sending people to a page with a high bounce rate is not a great idea, especially if you are paying money to do that. If you're doing Facebook ads and you're spending, I'll make up a number, $500 a month on a Facebook ad, and you're paying $5 a click to send someone to, I'll make this up, your All Ceramic Crowns page. If your All Ceramic Crowns page has a 90% bounce rate, clearly you're not doing something right. So let's figure out why people are leaving that page before we pay more money, right? Before we start charging people for soup, if we can't give it away, let's fix that first. So what I want to do now is we're going to take a tour of analytics. So we're going to jump out of PowerPoint here, and we're going to take a tour of analytics. So again, what I want you to do is I want you to watch as I show you the sample data to understand the concepts. Go back, watch the recording alongside your own Google Analytics, and ask the questions in the Facebook group. You can use the hashtag, #GA Google Analytics. And again, join our group. Just, again, if you have questions, we're going to share the questions and share the answers, and everybody learns something. So, and it's free, obviously. Again, but I just have it as private because I don't want marketers in there spoiling our fun. So, okay. The sample site we have is helpspot.com. So before I became famous, I'm kidding. Look, we all started somewhere. And one of the things that I used to do before I really branched out into dental, dental, I've been doing dental forever, but specifically into working with dentists and physicians, this is a tutorial-based website that I own, and I used to update it regularly. It actually still makes some money with Google AdSense ads, but it has a ton of traffic, and so that's great data to use to learn. And so that's what we're going to do now. So take a breath, and we're going to go now into the screen share. And obviously at the end, I'll leave my contact info up. So let's go ahead now. We're going to specifically look at, your screen should be blank now for a second while I just pull up this window here. And now you should have, okay, great. All right, so to get into analytics, obviously what you want to do is you go to google.com, which we're here already, and let's go to analytics. And lo and behold, analytics comes up first. You'll sign in. and then you'll have access to analytics. Once you sign in, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. This is the default dashboard in analytics. And so this is what you're going to see most of the time when you're in analytics. This is the first thing that you're going to see. And so what I want to do first is, let's take a look. Let me use my pen here for a sec. So right up here on the top left, this is where you are going to set the date range. So let's go ahead and just set it to the month. You can drop this arrow up and down to set the date range. And February only, we're not that far in. Let's look at January and let's click apply. And again, don't worry if I move a little quickly here. There's a lot I want to show you, and I've only got limited time to do it. So certainly come back. So here's my audience overview for the month of January. And let's take a look down here. And this is some really interesting data. Now, this is a blog type website. Let me just show you what it looks like so you have an idea. This is not what a normal dental website or medical website would look like. And let's show you why. Regardless, the data is still excellent. So let's load that up here. All right, we'll give that a minute to think what's going on there. All right, so what this is this website is really just single tutorials. Where someone had a question about their iPad, when I said, that's a great question, I wrote an article about, the years ago, the iPad can't connect to Wi-Fi. So what people use this website for is they do a Google search, the website comes up, they have a question, they read the answer, and then they leave. This isn't the kind of site where they go to my homepage and say, oh, look how interesting this is. And then they browse the whole site. So keep that in mind. Now back to analytics. So what you can see here is, for the month of January, we had almost 2,300 users and around 2,300 sessions. A session is a visit to the website. We don't talk about hits anymore. Don't say hits. No one says hits anymore, so don't say that. So a session is basically a visit. And a user is just that, a single user. So you can see here, we've got about 2,300 users and around 2,300 sessions, which means most people came once. And that's fine. If on a dental site or other sites, you're going to see that the sessions are usually much higher than the number of users. If each user came twice, then you'd see double this. You'd see, whatever this is, 2,300, you'd see, 4,600. So users is the number of unique people that came. Sessions is the number of actual visits. Page views is just what it is. 5,000 pages are viewed on this website. And over here, pages per session, what's the average number of pages people looked at? And they looked at 2, which is fine. That's kind of what I expect. And again, though, you want to look and see later on, well, what traffic sources of mine have people look at more pages than others. Average duration 20 seconds, it's about right for a blog site. Bounce rates are weird for this kind of site, so I don't want to look at that here. And you can see most of my traffic is new people. They have a question, they get their question answered, they leave and come back. They leave. This isn't the kind of site where they come back and back for more data because it's not how the site was designed. So that is your overview of the audience. And again, when you open analytics, this is what you're going, this is the default you're going to see. Now, one of the things that you can do is, let's say we want to look at data and compare it. So if you click compare to, let's off click that for a second. I want to look at December. So let's click apply. We see January's in blue and December's going to be in orange. And we can see here that, look at this. So comparing January to December, we had 17% more sessions, 18% more users. So all of our statistics in January were higher than our statistics in, comparing January to December than December. And let's just guess, because that was Christmas, people were busy shopping and not busy looking how to fix their iPad. So again, and that's something that's very helpful for you, because you can look and see, obviously, what happened before and what happened after. So let's clear that for now. So let's just stick with our January data. Oops, let's reset that and let's click apply. Okay, so now let's take a look down to demographics. We don't usually use demographics. There are ways to set this up in analytics. I don't usually enable it. Same thing with interests. That gets complicated. Again, we don't really need that. Very advanced analytics you could, but for now, we're going to look at geo. Geo is important. First, let's take a look at language. Obviously, for those of you who are in areas where there are multiple languages spoken, It's really important. That people come to your site, with the browser that was set for Spanish or for whatever language. This happens to be English, for whatever it was. Again, you want to know what your people are looking for. If I'm in Southern California or Southern Texas, probably makes sense to have some pages in Spanish. Or, if you are in a region where you have people who speak a certain language, it might make sense to have pages in that language. And again, here's something that can help you look at that. But the best thing here is location. Now, the HealthSpot is an international website, only because we have a lot of people from around the world. But that's not what's important to me. What's important to me here is, though, remember how I said we're at that cocktail party and we've got 2,300 new users? Only 830 of them came from the United States. So again, let's think of this as your dental website. We had 830 users, which is a lot for a dental site, but let's assume it is. And let's say our office is in California. Well, only 98 of those new users, of those 830, 11% are from California. So again, while I want to brag at the cocktail party that we had 830 new users, only 98 of them were actually people from California. And we can break it down further because, people from Northern California are not going to come all the way down to Southern California to have their crowns done. So let's take a look here and we can see, let's assume that we are in Los Angeles. Let me just clear this spotlight out. We can see here, obviously here's a map of it, but if we're down here in LA, yes, that's LA. If we're down here, forgive me if my geography of California is off a bit, but here's LA. Great, we had some visitors up here around, I think that's going to be San Francisco. They're not traveling there. So again, looking here, Los Angeles is really what matters to me. So we started out with 2,300 visitors from around the globe. We had 830 from the United States, 98 in California, but only 19 of them are realistically going to come to my office. Or at least in my area. So again, when you're looking at data, when someone says to you, look at all the new users we got, that's great. But if your office is in Miami and your visitors are coming from Seattle, that's great, but that doesn't put people in your chair. So next, let's talk about behavior. And this is interesting, new and returning. Again, it'll be different for your site. What we're going to see here, we know, is that the majority of people are new visitors. Okay. And what I'd like to see, of course, for your website is we want to see a lot of new visitors, but for dental, we also want to see returning visitors. It just shows people are getting recurring interest, and that should be pretty straightforward. Technology. Again, technology, these days, this is going to show you what browser people are using. These days, most of it is, when we build a website now, it pretty much is expected to show up the same way or very similarly on every device. In the past, it might have shown up a little weird on Internet Explorer or, not many people use Opera browser, so it's okay. But for now, we really expect that the website renders properly on all of our devices. And of course, that, for those of you who heard me before and who know about this, that's responsive design. The fact that when you have a website and you smush it down on an iPad and smush it down on an iPhone, it looks the same. It's consistent. When I lecture, I take out a napkin and I fold it into pieces to show people how that works. So mobile, again, another interesting section here is, again, let's take a look and see desktop, mobile, tablet. So everyone's going to tell you mobile, 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 mobile. And I agree with them. Things are moving towards mobile. That being said, and again, I can't show you other real dental data just for privacy reasons, but if you think about mobile, certainly people are using mobile. But I wonder what percentage of the people, and again, look at your own data, but I'm wondering, are the majority of your users going to browse on a desktop or are they going to be on mobile? They might look at the contact page on mobile, and you can certainly, there are ways to dig down in this and to see and say, well, what pages are they looking at on mobile? Because before you start making marketing decisions about that, the company tells you, oh, you have to invest in this and mobile and that and that. Certainly. But if mobile is only being used for people to look at your contact page when they're driving to the office, hands-free, of course, then, it's something you might want to think about. It might be helpful to know. So let's get rid of that. Moving down, let's take and devices. Devices are just fun to see what people are doing. Let's just see what devices they use. Why is it not cooperating with me? Oh, pointer, that's why. Okay, devices. And we can see that we have, unfortunately not set, but Xbox One. I wouldn't have guessed that. And some of these random ones down here. Let's look at acquisition, because this is one of the other cornerstones. Let's look at the overview. This is a bit of a messy screen, so I like the all traffic channels report better. Again, Google rearranges where they put these things sometimes, but for the most part, it stays the same. This is one of my favorite reports. And again, this is just, remember we said, this is the international data. I mean, there are ways to narrow this down that if we wanted to look at, like I said, just that Los Angeles data, which is much more helpful, you can certainly do that. That we can do another time. If there's interest, and along those lines, if there is interest in other webinars, let me know. For example, advanced analytics. I can show you how to narrow it down. There's something called segments that we can use to say, hey, listen, you know what? Hey, Google, take all of the data that you're showing me here and limit it to California, or limit it to New York City, or limit it to Miami, whatever it happens to be. But the majority of my traffic comes from organic search. Then direct people typing it in, referral from other websites, and one from social. So for a site I haven't updated in about 4 years or 3 years, that's pretty good. But again, your website, it's good to know I'm doing all this social outreach, I'm paying all this money for social media and blah, 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 and I'm only getting one visit from social. Well, so before you can even say, am I getting patients from social media or my social expenditures, or even getting the visitors to the site? And then you say to the company, we're paying you $1 a month to do all this work for us, and we're getting one visitor. So please don't, tell me that it's doing great, because the data shows me it isn't. And I'm not being an unreasonable customer. This is analytics. This is, nonpartisan. It's, it's impartial. It's neutral. It just is what the data is. And so you can certainly now, let's take a look at referral. You can naturally, as you might expect, drop down more into the data and see that, here we go. Well, DuckDuckGo is a search engine. This is what, direct? This is referrals. DuckDuckGo, and some other sites. But again, in your thing, you can look and see in your data where that's coming from. Organic search. Now, in the past, Google used to give us keywords, and it was so nice. But now you see not provided. It's not fair. I would love to see this data, because then I could know what people search for and end up on my website. But let's take a look here. I see enable wireless router radio, enable Wi-Fi radio. What is radio on off? So I had written an article about messing around with your router, and a lot of people looked at it. Why I'm only seeing this data from Google and they're not sharing, they're not provided, I don't know. But if nothing else, I do know 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people use different keywords, but they used 8 different keywords, but at least it's all about, all of those were about something that had to do with, the wireless radio. So at least I know that's a subject I could write about if I wanted to write more. I wish they would give us more data. They don't. Sometimes you can find data in Google Webmaster Tools. That is another webinar we're going to give another time, but that's just an idea to give you an idea here. Source Medium is an interesting report as well. And then, again, you can see here, so the source is, again, what's the source? And the medium is whether it's pay-per-click or it's organic. So remember, organic is something that someone types in. Pay-per-click is, well, you pay. So we can see here, just the source, the majority of my visitors came from Google, then Bing, direct is typing it in, and Yahoo, and so on and so on and so on. So now let's look at the medium to get more specific. Well, how many came from organic search, referral search? And of course, none came from paid search because I don't pay for search on this site. And this is just a combined report. So, and then referrals, very similar, where they're coming from. Now, let's look at social overview. And you can see here there's some social information. This is the one social thing that we got. You could look at yours. I don't want to focus too much on that because we only have about 5 minutes left. Let's look at behavior. And again, behavior, this summarizes what you saw before. What I like about behavior under site content is you can see what the top pages are. So remember I talked about the content program that we're doing? again, and you can do that on your own. There's nothing secret about that. Is here's what I want to know. Google might not have told me those keywords, but what they did tell me, you look here as well, the most popular page on this website wasn't the homepage. It was about what does it mean to turn on the wireless router radio. And so for me, that's fantastic. That's my most popular page, which means if I want to put maybe an ad on that page, I'd put it there. Or maybe I want to write more things about that. Because again, I don't know what keywords they use to get here. But I do know that a lot of people look, let's see, 25% of the traffic to the site, of the 5,000 page views, almost 27% of them were about that. So I certainly know that that's what people are interested in. I mean, at least 27% of them. And so if you look at your website, and sure, you're going to have the home page usually, then the contact page, but maybe meet the doctor page, or you're going to have dentures, veneers, crowns. Wouldn't you love to know that, behind the home page, by the way, the home page sometimes shows up as just a slash, just a single forward slash. So don't, get scared or surprised if you see that. But if you see like what I usually see, homepage, contact page, you meet the doctor, meet the staff page, whatever topic comes up next, if that's a specific topic, be it veneers, crowns, dentures, whatever it happens to be, that is going to be something that you might want to write content about. And that really, what else do we have for content? I mean, you can have the content drill down, which again just shows you the content, how they got places, and the landing pages. What pages, when people did a search and clicked on a link and wound up at your webpage, what pages did they wind up the most? And again, here's that landing page where they wound up on the most. Again, these are just different ways to look at your data to try and see, is my audience giving something away, my visitors, about what they, about what they're interested in. So at the end of the day, I do want to know what the audience, I want to know where my audience came from. As we see here in, where did we get this here? See, it moves around. But I want to know where they came from in terms of acquisition. And I also want to know, once they're, and again, this is a summary view, but, where did they come from in terms of acquisition? And when they got there, what were they looking at? So we're about out of time right now. Let me put up our contact information here so you have that as a reference. I will be sending you the next couple of days, or you'll be getting an email thanking you for coming and with a link to the recording for the webinar. I encourage you to join our Facebook group and to follow up if you have any questions on that Facebook group. And I also encourage you to look and see what other webinars we are putting on. And again, if there's something that you are interested in seeing or learning more about analytics, I certainly would love to hear from you. So I'm going to officially end the webinar now, but I'm happy to stay on if there are questions. I'm happy to take them. Thank you again for coming. So at this point, it looks like we do not have any questions. So we're going to wrap it up. I once again thank you all for attending and have a great evening. Thank you.